Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and
rank
the prom queen. Carla was the prom queen.
What is up? What's going on? This is Jeremy Shulman at Adjust the Ranks with a special guest we'll get to in just a second. But it's important to remember that, number one, we are completely in the degenerate cycle of fantasy football because it is March on a Wednesday in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time, and we are mock drafting a Dynasty startup mock. Number two, it's important to remember that Carla was the prom queen. And number three, it is important to remember that we have Coop A Fiasco on Twitter, Andrew Cooper from the Fantasy Alarm, the FSWA Writer of the Year, amongst many other accomplishments. Mr. Andrew Cooper, thank you so much for joining us. How's it going?
Of course, man. I feel like I've been missing the pods lately. We've been doing a little radio and stuff, but we're getting back into pod season. Now that the combine's done, free agency starts next week. Like, it's time to light it up again. And I'm glad to be back on with you, man, because I love hanging out and I love this format. You know, a little randomizer, a little mock draft. I see Joey Wright snuck his way in, which I don't necessarily love, but everything else I'm liking.
Nice. Awesome. Really appreciate it. We are live on YouTube. Jamie has joined us at the 103. So thank you, Jamie. We still have a few spots available. So I will post that into the chat in just a minute or two before we get started. Maybe you can sneak your way into this mock draft in just a minute. So before we begin, here's what's happening. We are doing a Dynasty startup mock draft 1 QB. Because we have Andrew on the program, it will be a tight end premium, full PPR, and make sure that we get all of those tight ends. But as you teased a little bit, we will have a wrinkle, and that wrinkle is we are going to randomize our builds for this Dynasty startup mock. We're going 12 team, 10 rounds here with the 1 QB. So we're going to get into that in just a minute to make sure that we, I guess, struggle our way through this Dynasty mock. But before we do, just a quick bit of advertisement. We have a huge schedule coming up here in March. Of course, Andrew Cooper is no slouch. Neither are any of the guys on this list. So please check back in. Sign up to Adjust the Ranks. We are, and the Fantasy Football Universe. We are on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're everywhere you want to be. This information is posted. But more importantly, you can get in on these mock drafts with these guys and also have us probably assess your team, at least if you do a good job at the end of these mocks, because we'll do a little bit of a breakdown before we wrap here. So we appreciate you joining us. And I guess with that, let's jump in. Joey Wright saying something nice about you, Mr. Cooper, before we get in. How do you feel about that?
You know what? That's his move. That's his classic move that he always takes the low road, but then I take the low road once, he jumps right to the high road. Attaboy, Joey. We did have a good year, man. We did have a good year. Because I've been nominated in the past 3 times, lost all of them. JJ Zacchaeus pretty much won every award I've ever been nominated for. This year, though, we did win. We won. I won Football Writer of the Year. I won Football Article of the Year, and then we won Fantasy Alarm 1 Radio Show of the Year. So big year for Fantasy Alarm. Hopefully 2025 can live up.
Awesome, man. Congratulations. Joey is just throwing out the compliments and enjoying himself. We appreciate you, Joey. We'll have to get you on the show very soon. But outside of that, let's do this. If I can get the technology going. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to spin the wheel. Coop, do you want to go first or do you want to go second in terms of the spin between me and you?
Why don't you go first and show me how it's done?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I don't know how it's done, so we're going to find out. So I'm going to spin the wheel here. We'll see what happens. We have a number of options, as you can see, and I've landed on 0, which is my favorite. I am running a 0 build. Oh, look at that. That's something special, man. The 0 build, just to be clear, means that I am not allowed to pick a player at my given position. That's either RB, wide receiver, or wide receiver before round 7. So I'm going to go over to the next wheel if I can find it. Let's see, wheel number 2. And I'm going to spin this bad boy. And because I got 0, we'll just take whatever's closer between running back and wide out. This is my favorite. I got a little bit lucky with the wheel here. 0 RB. Even with this running back class, Andrew coming in, 0 RB, I think is going to be always the way to go. I mean, Denny right? And some other guys in the past have written about that high EV, low, what's the word? Fragility build
That's right.
of zero RB. And that's the way I tend to go. How do you feel about the zero RB strategy?
I mean, here's the thing for me is I typically don't go into any draft saying that I'm going to go this way, but I love it when it develops that way, right? So when I sit down, I usually start by taking best available player, but if it leans into a build that's like a hero or zero RB, I know exactly how to operate. That's why this is a great show to have because you get a peek at every strategy and you can kind of learn who the targets are, learn how they each work, and that way you can start off saying best available. And if you get to the fourth round, say, wow, I took best available guy, it's all wide receivers. Now you know who the targets are, right? And I'll tell you what, I keep a short list of the articles that I believe to be the best ones of all time. And the 2013 article by Sean Siegel,
Yep.
the original zero RB and
Yes.
the facility article, like that is an all-time great article, makes all the sense in the world and changed the way that we play this game. It's just that at the time, no one was doing it, and it was really a huge advantage. Now that people are caught on to the strategy, I think the best way to do it is to know all the strategies and kind of play it as you go. And there's another layer to it in Dynasty too, where it's like now you're not only just going with this type of strategy, but you got to decide if you're playing to win now, playing to win later. That's why a Dynasty startup is so much fun. I love doing these.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And yeah, that article for me was a game changer. I found it through Denny's work. But yeah, absolutely just the way to go, even today with all these great RBs coming into the league. Andrew, I'm going to spin the wheel for you. So hold your breath and let's see what you get. Very nice. Very nice. Good work.
Okay, so I like to play to win now. The question is, do I want to go robust bully tight, or I'm hoping that I get tight end. I know that yeah, you know what I'll do? I'll do my choice and I'll just do play to win now. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play to win now, and then that way I can talk my way through my strategy. And you know what? We could still end up doing a robust or a zero type build, depending on how the draft goes.
Yeah, absolutely. But just so everybody knows that we're fully prepared here at ATR, this is Coop's wheel right here, just in case there was any doubt.
I really hope that it lands on like one of those tiny little slivers. All right.
So close.
Tight end
is surprise. So you don't have to do the tight end. It's totally your choice here. But let's make sure that as we go through, we're just talking about the different builds that we do. So let me figure out how the heck to. This is really my Achilles heel, man, is trying to figure out how to switch from one presentation thing to the next.
Nobody knows, bro. Nobody. I've been doing this a long time. No idea, man. Screw it up every time. Not to mention, right now, I'm having trouble getting into the mock draft because Sleeper is trying to text a code to my phone for some reason, which my phone is in the other room. So I'll be right back. You're gonna have to filibuster for a second here, brother.
I got you. So once again, we are doing a 1 quarterback tight end premium full PPR dynasty mock draft. Startup, of course. As you can see, we have a lot of these spots populated. As we go through, we're going to make sure that we take out any sort of ADP that seems suspect here. Because we're still working, unfortunately, in March. We're working with that ADP from last season. So obviously that's a big problem right now, but it's also a big advantage to you if you are doing your startups here in March, especially with the way that rookies are shaking out pre-NFL draft. We just had the combine. Free agency, as Coop mentioned, is about to pop off here. We're already seeing offensive linemen go to the Bears en masse. So whoever ends up the running back over there is going to be interesting. Caleb Williams is a massive value, I think, right now as well. So there's really, really interesting values to be had because the ADP is so far off. But I think we're about to jump into it here. Coop, any last words for yourself?
No, I'm ready. I'm in. I pick number 4. And I think that for this strategy, that's going to be a great spot to be picking from. So let's rock.
I love it.
I love it. So here's how I operate in virtually every dynasty draft is I go in and for the first round or two, and I think everyone should be doing exactly this, which is you're going to have players that are both young and good. You need to exhaust that group of players before you decide what to do. So in this particular case, just for the sake of like an example, we decided in advance what our strategy is. What I typically do is go into a blank slate and I say, okay, I'm going to just pick young and good players for the first however long they last. And then I'll look around at what everyone else is doing, right? So we got Joey Wright, Jeremy, a bunch of people hanging in the draft here. Whatever they do, I will pivot off that. And I'll
Yep.
also look for partners, right? So I'm win now. If I see there's somebody out here taking a bunch of rookies, I'll immediately, and I love doing slow drafts for this reason versus the fast. I'll immediately start reaching out to those people. Hey, I see what you're doing. I like
Yep.
what you're doing.
Yep.
I'm doing the opposite. So let's
That's
you
right.
and me figure out how do we work together here? How do we, it's not collusion for me to say, hey, you're playing to win later. I'm playing to win now. Why don't I trade you my picks later for your picks in this draft? Right.
Yep.
So if anybody out there, Joey Wright, Jeremy over at Reddit, if you guys think you're going to be going after the young guns, I'm right here.
I love it. And that's really what you got to do. You got to pivot where you can and make sure that you're just playing the board. I think the fantasy footballers say it best when they say, the old Bruce Lee be water, right? In the draft, you want to make sure that you're able to pivot. I know that I'm saying here that I'm going in with a 0 RB build, and that mindset is okay. But if throughout the draft, it really doesn't work for you and the board falls a different way and running back becomes a value later on, you got to take those guys. So don't be afraid to switch up strategies as you go in, but having a mindset going in, I don't think is necessarily a problem.
Bingo. So here's what I'm going to do here is that because it's Dynasty and because I have the luxury of playing to win now, I'm going to take the best young player available that I think is going to last the longest. A lot of times in win now, you might force a running back, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a guy that I think is locked in here and has many years left of being a high level asset. Like you can win now. Like you don't have to go out and take Christian McCaffrey like Team 6 did to win now. It
Right.
certainly helps. But again, we don't even know what he's going to look like when he comes back. He obviously came back from the Achilles and then he hurt his knee. You know what I mean? So, and again, we know he's going to take part in some offseason activities. But to me, I've already moved a guy like that. And I know he's incredible. I know he can win leagues. But I've already moved a guy like that into the next tier of guys where I only want to take him once I have to make a decision between winning now or playing for later. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think he's a first round dynasty startup pick anymore. So I am going to remove him probably after we get through the first round, just because he's probably in the second or third or
Oh,
even.
that's an auto draft pick.
Yeah. We got a few
Oh,
here where they're egregious. I think we'll remove them. But we'll give him, probably a wide receiver, whoever's left there, and we'll just call it a wrap. But yeah, that's the issue that we face, right? We see what came off the board here. We got Jamar Chase, Lamb, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Neighbors, Puka. Those guys are great. Other than a BTJ, I think we're roughly kind of in lockstep with that ADP. Maybe AJ Brown, Drake London, maybe they find their way into the first round. Then you have all of these great running backs at the top of the board, and Brock Bowers. I think that's absolutely good.
great pick.
But really need to kind of be very careful here in the first round to make sure that you are, taking the guys that are going to help your team. And I think we also have a situation where we are not necessarily drafting a 1 QB squad. So just a reminder to the group here. What are you thinking about the first round? Let's say Saquon goes in the first. We have all those running backs, all those wide receivers, Coop, Brock Bowers. How are you feeling about how it shook out?
Yeah, I think honestly, again, Josh Allen, like a pick like that. The problem that I have with Josh Allen, in Superflex, it's a different story. But you also have to remember that it's very rare for guys to continue running the ball as a quarterback at a high level after the age of 30. In fact, this year, Josh Allen became only the third quarterback to run the ball 100 times as a quarterback over the age of 28. Right? It's been Cam Newton, it's been Michael Vick, and it's been him. And he had
Yep.
104 carries, and it was a year where there were 17 games. So even he knows that he's going to have to develop more to a pocket passer. So if you look at the trajectory of guys like Russell Wilson, who used to run a ton, kind of dialed it back a bit, like that's probably where guys like that are going to have to go. These guys are potentially built different, as the kids like to say. So Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen could have more seasons doing this, but at a certain point, you have to adjust. And he said it himself. So for me, if I'm going to go with a mobile quarterback in a dynasty startup draft, I'm drafting Jalen Hurts. I'm drafting somebody
Mhm.
who is, a little bit younger, has a little more years left,
Yep. Yeah, I like that one. Hurts also winning the championship this year, kind of hopefully putting those questions to rest about is he able to do those things. Coop, I'm going to give you a minute here. First of all, I tagged you on Twitter, so if you wouldn't mind throwing
Yeah,
that out
sure.
there. Secondly, I'm just going to make a few changes and give you a few extra seconds here on the clock as I remove Christian McCaffrey and I remove Tyreek Hill. These guys, unfortunately, at this stage in the game, are no longer first and second round dynasty picks. We'll throw them back on the board, but like we discussed, it's really a issue here with the
Yeah.
ADP at this stage of the game. AJ
Give him
Brown at
give him
6
AJ
isn't
Brown.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
give him
he's
AJ
not
Brown
great.
and give the
Oh,
other guy Sam Laporta because it's tight end
yeah,
premium. That way
I
it
like
fits
it.
in with the what we're doing here.
Perfect. And Josh Allen, that was a user, but that was a user mistake, just not clear on the 1 QB. So we'll leave it. If you take Josh Allen the first, I don't think it's a great move. But like you mentioned, those guys are game changers. The top 3, 4, they're mobile. They're going to be in the top 5 of quarterbacks perennially. And Josh Allen certainly fits that bill. He's been the QB1 like 4 years in a row or something like that.
Yeah, still a good pick. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So I'm going in here. I'm on the clock, and I'm not going to take Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill. I worry about the health for McCaffrey. I worry about the mental health for Tyreek Hill. I'm going in. I'm taking Jonathan Taylor here. And this is a guy who, he fits the exact mold of what I'm trying to do. I want to win this year. I want to win next year. I want to win the year after. I mean, my plan is as always, is just to keep winning and just to
Yep.
do well in the rookie drafts and keep it going. But when you plan to win this year, you want guys that are focused on this year and next year. And Jonathan Taylor, I mean, this guy, if you look at yards from scrimmage of all the active players, he's a top 5 player in that stat, right? Like
Yep.
when healthy, and again, he's been nicked up, but it was never really a problem for him for a long time. Like this is a guy who goes out there and makes it happen. And with the RPO setup with Anthony Richardson, I mean, the efficiency is easy. We saw it last year with Saquon Barkley. Richardson has to take a step forward, but I mean, a guy like Jonathan Taylor is going to get his regardless. And you got to consider that with Dynasty, with guys like Anthony Richardson, when you're drafting weapons like Michael Pittman, these guys, like look at a guy like AJ Brown, right? He
Yep.
had a bad landing spot. People didn't like it. He was kind of just okay. Eventually, you're going to get a chance. Terry McLaurin just finally got a quarterback. Now he's awesome. I mean, there are times where people just go their entire careers without good quarterbacks. Guys like Andre Johnson, right? But he still put up a Hall of Fame career. So we're drafting talent here, right? Like that's the main focal point.
Yep. Totally agree. And you can see in 1 QB as well, the talent dries up, especially in tight end premium. 3 tight ends off the board. I would have loved to take a tight end here at the turn, but I do not want any guy outside of these top 3, for a couple of rounds here. You can see the wide receivers, of course, are going off the board. You got the young guns, Jackson Smith and Jigba included for myself here. And I'm going to take another guy, even though I think it's risky, in Ladd McConkey and JSN with Jamar Chase. Hopefully, if McConkey can hold on to that wide receiver 1 volume role, at least for a year or 2, he's certainly going to be a serviceable high-end 2 on his team for years to come if they bring in a true alpha. But I really do like that. And then Travis Etienne, before you go, Andrew, I think we're going to remove him as well. Just the landscape has changed so drastically in the last few years. It's in the last few months, really. It's really hard to kind of value some of these guys this highly anymore, but we were doing it last year.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, right, especially with the coach change and what happened last year with this exact coach, Liam
Yeah.
Cohen, where Bucky Irving surpassed Rashad White. It's like the farther away you get from the regime that drafts a player. And
Yeah.
again, he's had the benefit of being best friends with Trevor Lawrence, but that the farther away you get from that group, the fewer loyalties you have, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Agree.
who are you
How
thinking for this
about
one?
Kyron? We'll just stick with wide receiver or Kenneth Walker.
Go with go with whoever. I'm taking whichever the other of those guys that you don't
Let's
take.
do
Kyron.
Walker
Give him
here.
Kyron. No. I
Oh,
want
too
Walker.
late. Oh,
Give
yeah.
him
Yeah.
give him Kyron.
Done.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, Kyron, I don't know, but
Well, Kyron, the
what
thing is,
we
both players are awesome. Both players are awesome. So Kyron Williams, what you love about Kyron is that no running. Sean McVay is the only guy willing to do the old school. This is our running back. He gets all the snaps, right? Like he played 85% of the snaps on average last year. The next highest, it was 87 actually. The next highest back was Bijan at what, 75, right?
Yep.
And if I take Kyron Williams in Dynasty, I'm making it a priority to circle back and get Blake Corum. Because in those situations, it's to me, it's not that Blake Corum didn't carve out a role. It's that they like the way they do things, and he has a role, and he would take over that whole role if something were to happen. And miraculously, Kyron Williams playing the crazy snap share, 1,000 snaps, literally 1,000 snaps. Nothing happened to him, and then he didn't play week 18. And what happens? Blake Corum breaks his arm. So there you go.
And in the world of, increased RB timeshares in backfields, there aren't many true workhorses out there. Kyron Williams is a true workhorse. Even if Corum's load increases, like you said, this season, Kyron's out there a ton, and he stayed pretty healthy last season, which is really the concern. Matthew Stafford, a year older, Cooper Kupp out the door. So they're going to have to continue to rely on the running game here in Los Angeles. And we know that Sean McVay running back role, as you mentioned, that Todd Gurley volume will be there for Kyron this year.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better, man. And that's why it didn't matter. I could have taken Kyron. I could have taken Kenneth Walker. The reason I like Kenneth Walker here, and I'll just go ahead and take him, is that this new scheme coming in with Clint Kubiak, it utilizes a fullback. Right. He came over from the 49ers, right? The 49ers, the Dolphins, the Texans, very briefly, like these teams like using a fullback with 2 wide receivers and a 2-way tight end, right? And as you see in the chat, if you want to put Jamie's comment up there, he said, did you see Seattle release Tyler Lockett?
Yeah,
and Metcalf officially requested a trade. Well, the moment they brought in Clint Kubiak, and Clint Kubiak told everyone he's going to bring in a fullback, which he did. He said, I'm bringing a fullback in. That vaporizes the wide receiver 3. It creates a huge problem. Like if you look at a team like the Dolphins and their pass catchers, the leading pass catchers on that team were Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Jonnu Smith, and number 5 in terms of target was like Julian Hill. They just don't use the wide receiver 3. They use a fullback instead. Same with the 49ers, which is why it's such a huge decision coming up between Juwan Jennings and Ricky Parasol now that Debo's been traded. But with this offense, with what Clint Kubiak wants to do, he wants to run the ball. Alvin Kamara was on pace to have his first 1,000-yard season ever at his age, right? Like Kenneth Walker in this offense with the fullback, and he brought over the offensive line coach. Like I think he's going to be incredible. I'm not worried about Charbonnet at all. Again, it's a situation where I'll potentially draft both of them.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And Tyler Lockett, I mean, you just have to release him. He's not the guy he was. We'll have to see what they do in the draft and free agency. But if they really do move on for DK Metcalf, I'm even happier about my JSN pick at 212. And then, it's Geno wheels up. I think always he's a supreme value these days, especially in super flex leagues. We're not going to see him here, but in 1QB, but certainly in super flex leagues, I think Geno has a great mid to high end quarterback 2 situation, but they're going to have to fortify that line. They're going to have to get another weapon if DK bounces. So it's a lot to ask for. Just a couple of quick notes here of what's going on in the draft. Talking about Allen at the 201 or the 112 is where he went. Feeling good about it. Agree. And that's what we talked about. So that's our guy, Mike from Dynasty Dogs, who has just, as of about a month ago, joined the fantasy football universe. So we appreciate awesome. Mike and his takes. Jamie, I'm happy to snipe you. Jamie is in the comments all the time on our channel. I need to get over to his channel. But Jamie, we always appreciate you, and I'm happy to snipe you where
Jamie rules, dude.
Let's take a look at the 3rd round here. So after Ladd and Kyron, as we discussed, Achane, Walker, Tet, Tyreek, which might be a little bit early, but not so bad if he turns it around. Then we got Bucky. ETN can kick rocks in the 3rd round. I think probably 4th or 5th round these days, maybe even later. He's off my board. And then you got Cook, absolutely. Devonta, Josh Jacobs, T. Higgins. We'll see where he ends up. Of course, he is tagged to the Bengals. Is he a tag and trade? We'll find out. But I think it's more than likely he stays there. And they're talking about a long-term deal, which, Coop, I love for T. Higgins. I love for Joe Burrow. I love for fantasy, because that means there's no chance they have to sign any sort of impact defensive players. And it's just air it out for years in Cincy. Sam Hubbard retired today as well. It's Joseph Asai and nobody else in that defense. Whoever the middle linebacker is as well. Logan, someone. Anyway. That's all.
Yeah, and again, like that team now, and the thing with that lane spot, so everyone always wants the tight end to that spot. When if T. Higgins is there, you don't want your rookie tight end to be drafted there. You want your guy to have a shot to be a top 2 target on the team. When you go through and look at, like, take wide receiver, like put all wide receivers and tight ends into one bucket, right? Which I did this offseason just to check on it. You put all those guys into one bucket, and you take the guy that was the third target on his own team. So the guy that got the third most targets, the highest scorer in PPR was Rashad Bateman. Mm-hmm. And we're talking the wide receiver 40 in that format, right? Like, the vast majority of difference-making players are either lead their team in targets or are second. And it's incredibly rare to have 3 guys all on the same team get 100-plus targets. Depending where you look this year, Pro Football Focus had nobody getting them. I think if you look at Pro Football Reference, the Bears, Rome Odunze snuck in there. And again, Pro Football Focus rules out like obvious throwaways. So if you go and watch Rome Odunze's highlight reel, he did not get 100 catchable targets, not even close.
Highlight reel.
He caught 91.5% of his targets that were catchable per player profiler. Yeah. But his overall catch rate was 53% because it was just a bunch of last minute junk that was thrown up his way, things that were completely uncatchable. So when you look at a site like Pro Football Focus, there really were only 2 guys maximum on the team getting those kind of targets. So the Bengals are no longer a premier landing spot for a tight end. I would say for the rookie tight ends, the number 1 spot right now, barring any major change, would be the Chargers, right? Because you got Ladd McConkey, who, as of this moment, who's the second best pass catcher on that football team, you think, Jeremy? Exactly. That's all. That's literally
smart.
That's what I'm saying. That's all you got to say. Josh Palmer's a free agent, bro. So they got like nobody. Yeah, it's like
it's not QJ, that's for sure.
Right. So if you take that situation, and then you take Greg Roman, who orchestrated a top 5 all-time season for Mark Andrews at the tight end position, and you put somebody like Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren in that spot, boy, that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I hear you. We're going to allow this quarterback run to go. I removed Mahomes from the 4-5 and he goes to the 4-7. It is what it is. Mahomes is my QB 6 or 7 because I can't really push him down any further. He has the opportunity to bounce back, so we'll see it. But as you alluded to earlier, you got to take these guys like Jalen Hurts ahead of him. Joe Burrow, I think, goes ahead of Patrick Mahomes at this stage for all the reasons we just discussed. You know what? Maybe I will, before your pick, kind of remove him and just throw Burrow in there. But we have a QB run. And then, of course, Rome, as you mentioned, he's my biggest buy. He's my biggest buy of the offseason. Last year, it was Jackson Smith and Jigba. That worked out for me, but it was also Mark Andrews. That didn't work out for me, although I feel like it should have. This year, it is Rome Odunze. He is absolutely a huge buy. Unfortunately, I think everybody knows it because we'll see, but not expecting Keenan Allen back. Even if he is probably in a big capacity. And of course, that offensive line already fortified with 2 big signings in the last 24 hours. So Rome is great. Olave, Rice, who I believe in. Zay Flowers is a little risky, I think, in the 4th round. But how do you feel about those wide receivers specifically? As I put, let's see, I'll put Joe Burrow at the 4-7.
Yeah, I think I'm absolutely fine with all those picks. I wrote a full article with some film on why I like Rome Odunze a lot. I mean, you go in and you look at the way he was utilized, which was not good. He was basically used as the 3rd wide receiver field stretcher. You look at the scheme set up was obviously brutal in the first half of the year, but he made a lot of great plays. Again, if you just type in fantasy alarm Rome Odunze, pull that up. There's a ton of clips that highlight that whole thing. I did one on Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. I'm working my way through a lot of those. But I honestly like all those picks: Olave, Rice, Flowers. I think Rice was set to be the focal point of that offense. Yep. As Travis Kelce moves away and Xavier Worthy ends up being more the field stretcher, Rice's role is incredible, especially for PPR. Here, I'm going to make my pick here. Yep. And I'm going to take, again, I'm playing to win now. So I'm going to take DJ Moore. I do believe in Caleb Williams. Keenan Allen's gone. I think DJ Moore is going to be in that Amon-Ra St. Brown role for Ben Johnson. Now I could have both the Amon-Ra St. Browns. And if you could pause the draft real quick, here's what
Yeah, of
I
course.
would do. I'm not sure if you're watching right now, Darvin, but looking around the draft, and I see Darvin taking 2 back-to-back rookies on top of 2 very
Mhm.
young players, I would reach out to Darvin now and I would say, hey,
Yep.
Darvin, you can have my rookie draft pick for next year for your pick this round. And if you go to like a site like Keep Trade Cut, that's where you see those going in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, right? Yeah, I've last year I traded my pick for a 4th. So if you're out there, I'm not sure if we could even do this in this draft, but this is where I would make that move. This is where I would say, okay,
Yeah, I
I'm
like
playing
it.
to win now. You've loaded up on young players. You can have my rookie pick, and if your team comes in last this year, you'll have the first pick, and you'll have whatever pick I have, and who knows? It's dynasty fantasy football. You could have the first 2 picks in the draft next year if my team face plants. So, it's like that's the kind of move I would do right now.
Yep. No, I love that. And that's kind of the way you need to think. And the idea of just kind of being as fluid as you can in these drafts. If things do not fall your way, you need to make sure to pivot. And you also need to be attentive, like you're saying, to who's doing what. I would say, hold up, Andrew, don't trade Darvin your picks. Trade them to me and we'll work it out. Because I'm also going very young here with 3 young wide receivers. And just as a reminder, while you're going to win now, I am doing a 0 RB approach. I cannot take an RB until at least round 7, and I want to make sure that I fill my roster here. So I've got back-to-back picks, and the tight ends, unfortunately, are not peeling. Kincaid obviously fell off big. Kyle Pitts is no longer that dude. I mean, he might be again, but I'm not taking the risk as the tight end 4 off the board. Other than George Kittle, I think really Hockenson, no, we don't know what that's going to look like. At this stage of the draft, I can't invest in any of these guys personally at tight end. Rookies, I think personally, I'm a little, risk averse in terms of drafting the rookies this early. So personally, since I'm RB, 0 RB here, there's a lot of ways that I can go. Xavier Worthy and Addison are staring me in the face. But I think first I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle for me is just so young, so dynamic. Number 6 overall pick in the draft a few years back. We know how fast he is. The problem is, does that offense work without Tua? Does it work with Mike McDaniel? We're not totally sure. It ran last year through Achane and Jonnu Smith. And Coop, I'm kind of working with this theory. I don't think it's anything that's surprising, but we heard a lot of this too high safety defenses kind of going in and trying to stop the big play, trying to stop explosives. And that could have potentially put a cap on some of these big time receivers and led to things like Jonnu and Achane getting all the work. What do you think about that? And do you think that trend is going to continue? And can these guys kind of get home as I make my next pick?
Yeah, and the scariest thing is like not just a too high safety, but the things that come along with it, right? Like the Ravens and the Eagles especially run these hybrid defenses. They got different names for it, like palms or like cover. I think
Yep.
some of them call it like cover 9, where it's like it's not even man to man or zone. It's a set of rules that everyone knows, right? It's like if this, then that rules. Where when you draft a guy like Cooper DeJean, who's super smart, and you've got all these guys, you can run that. But it's like they
Yep.
see a bunch, and depending on who goes where, they react to it, and it's just very confusing for quarterbacks. And it ends up what ends up happening is what you're suggesting is that the safeties over the top are taking away the deep plays, and you have to
Yep.
adjust to it on the fly. You can't basically say to yourself, if they're taking away your ability as a quarterback to say, if they do this, I'm doing that, because you don't
Right.
know. You don't. You're the whole time you spent, like if you watch the Rams and the Dolphins and the 49ers before the play, they send one guy to the other side of the formation. And then right before the play starts, another guy goes in motion because they're trying to figure out if the other team's in man or zone or not.
Yep.
These new defenses that with all the moving parts, they kind of neutralize that. So it really has hurt teams like the 49ers and the Rams and the Dolphins to some degree because they love that motion. I mean, like the Dolphins are always having some guy do like crazy orbit motion and all that.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, Waddle is a guy that I do like, though. I believe in the player. I think,
Agree.
back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons to start his career. And I do love that the team uses the fullback because it consolidates the targets.
Yeah. And the other thing to consider as well is just, in terms of, I'm losing my focus here. But you really want to make sure that if the team is constantly taking up the big play and you have big explosives, like, for example, the Philadelphia Eagles, right? The Eagles moved from a situation where they have Devonta Smith, they have Dallas Goedert, who's more than capable of receiving tight end. They got, obviously, the great A.J. Brown. But Saquon Barkley had the
Incredible.
most dominant RB season. And I don't think that's a mistake, right? It's not a mistake that Mark Andrews lived off of high efficiency because Derrick Henry had a dominant season. Teams are saying, okay, if you want to back up and take away these explosive plays, we're just going to continue to pound the rock. And the teams that are able to do it, do it. And then conversely, the Chiefs won with this for a couple of years doing that. Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt slamming the rock in. But then, conversely, if the teams cannot run the football, you're seeing guys like Achane, James Cook play a major role in the receiving game. Jonnu Smith is that perfect example of whoever you can use. Sean Payton wants the Joker. Whoever you can use in that short area of the field can absolutely help to open up the offense. And then hopefully you can break a deep play off of that.
Bingo, dude. I mean, that's the thing, is that now we're seeing the flip where running backs are now more valued than they were before. Same with tight ends. Like, this draft is going to push running backs and tight ends up so far. People are not ready for it, especially because you look at free agency. Like, who's the best tight end? Who's the best two-way tight end? And let me make my pick, and then we'll get to this one.
Sure.
So here I'm looking. I need another wide receiver here because I think that running backs in the dynasty format like that, like this, valuable running backs fall, whereas wide receivers don't necessarily fall as much as I want them to. Question here is, do I go Pittman, who's a player I believe in that's younger, or do I go DK Metcalf, who is quite, a guy that is now requesting a trade? He basically only eats candy for breakfast. Like, it's just like there are some question marks there. So here I'm still playing a win now, but I'm gonna go a little neutral with Michael Pittman.
Love it.
There are definitely guys like Devontae Adams that command targets, Stephon Diggs, but you got them coming off injuries. And again, they got to update this because there's no chance Tank Dell's going where he's ranked in these rankings, right? Like, no one's taking. He might not even play this year, so they definitely got to get these sorted over here.
Yeah, it's
It is early. I mean, it's March.
Yeah, we're the degenerates who are here in March doing the draft, but we got 169 people watching us anyway, and at least we know we're in good company. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, our guy Jamie, just make sure if you are available at 9:30 Eastern at Fantasy Six Pack, you can check out his brand new podcast tonight. So make sure you do that. We love Jamie in these streets. Also throwing us with the news. I don't know if Kirk was released, but that has been speculated for a week or two now, certainly since the combine. So something to keep in mind. In terms of the picks that have been going on, Joey almost took Rice over Cook. He probably should have made it back around, but hey, you got James Cook. So I don't really have an issue with that. I keep sniping Jamie. That's old news, Jamie. We know we have similar values. Too bad, my friend. But yeah, this is a good question, right? With the way that we're building rosters, and because I am going, zero RB. I got one of my guys sitting on the bench, but this is actually how I prefer to run zero RB really quickly. Is that, I'd like a high-end QB or tight end, but those guys kind of went off the board. I need to make sure that I have one extra wide receiver personally who's sitting on my bench who I can rotate through in case of injury, in case of other things. And then the QB and tight end come through so that once I finally get to running back and take those pot shots, certainly that is the way that I like to build. But that's kind of goes back to that anti-fragile mindset where, these running backs turn over anyway. Did we know Bucky was going to be as dominant? No. Did we know that Chase Brown was going to immediately take over or Zach Moss get hurt? No. These things happen at the running back position all the time. Yeah. And again, I was between taking a guy like Pittman or taking George Kittle there. I know Joey, great pick there. Had I traded with Darvin, that's probably what I'd done, because I think George Kittle, like, he's a unicorn player, and you have to, like, I didn't take Brandon Ayuk because he's going to miss time. We don't know how much time he's going to miss, and I can't afford to lose my first couple games waiting for a player like that. Conversely, George Kittle is going to be a featured part of that offense regardless, but even more so with no Debo and no Ayuk to start the season potentially. And then who knows where Christian McCaffrey is going to be. So, like, a guy like George Kittle is an absolute great win now pick. Now it puts me in an interesting spot because I thought I could wait on him as part of a win now build. Now I'm looking around and figuring out what I might do. There's definitely some guys out there. I don't want to tip my hand just yet. But again, a team like Kingpin
Karen, I suspected that they might be a team that I could put again, when I'm talking about trading, which we're not necessarily going to do here, but talking about trading to give me more picks now and give away my picks to people later. Now
Yep.
that she has 3 different rookies on her team, young players like Rice and Bowers, that's a team I would look at and say like, "Hey, like I know you could probably win this year, but like you can create a lot of leverage here." I mean, look at my team, look at some of these other teams that have like multiple guys that go in the first 2 or 3 rounds of a redraft league. Like once it gets to the point where you look at it and say, "Hey, I don't think I'm going to win," you really should create leverage that way.
Yep. Yep, I agree with you. And here again, we are in a position where we have some rookies going, but the ADP just isn't great at the moment. Jonathan Brooks might not play next year. Rashad White might not be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, or certainly the RB2 over there with Sean Tucker's ascension. So, I have a working theory that Rashad White is going to be on the cut bubble, and then the Jags are going to trade like a 6th round pick for him, and get him back with Liam Cohen and form the ultimate I don't give a crap running back room.
That would be brutal. That would be brutal because I do like the idea of Tank Bigsby, but again, it's like if they brought in White, that would tell you that they don't trust him in the pass game.
Yeah, and I think that's highly likely, but we'll see. That's more feels than it is actual science here.
There's a lot. I mean, the thing is, a lot of the stuff that people were talking about, like feeling wise, or there were rumors about, it's coming to fruition. I mean, like the team. I think the thing about it is that agents they have to get their information out there one way or another, and they realize that you can leak that. Oh, my guy's not happy. My guy is looking for a change, and get that out there, right? Like, and another one that I've seen a lot of that I think is entirely possible. Is the possibility that a guy like Kyle Pitts gets traded before the season starts here because they need money. They're in the hole. He could be traded with $10 million off the books. And again, they want a two-way tight end for that offense with Zach Robinson, right? So that's why Charlie Warner ended up playing snaps. Why Durham Smythe ended up playing snaps over a guy like Mike Gesicki. So you look at it and it's highly it's not only highly it makes sense, but it's like it would make sense for the player, it makes sense for the team, it makes sense for everybody. So I'm kind of rooting for that.
Yep, I hear you. Sorry, give me a
You got to
second
change
here.
anything here?
Yeah, I'm going to change. Kelsey needs to go. Rashad White needs to go. Tal, just tell us in the chat who you'd prefer instead. I'll replace Kelsey with Mark Andrews. People are really down on Mark Andrews. How are you feeling about him? The potential that he might be traded. Talk about guys who have been rumored to be traded here. What are we thinking about Mark Andrews and his absolute terrible final game of the season, and the fact that he had to live off of all of that efficiency, throughout the course of the year? Maybe he was hurt early in the season due to a car accident, due to recovery. But you got Isaiah Likely waiting in the wings. I mean, Mark Andrews just seems like it's a little risky.
Yeah, so the problem, like, and again, he drops that pass, everybody's upset with him. The problem you run into with getting rid of Mark Andrews is that you have to change the whole scheme now, right? Because they use so many 2 tight end sets. Like, it wasn't like Isaiah Likely wasn't playing. Isaiah Likely was playing a ton, right? These guys are both playing 50, 60, 70% of the snaps most games. So if you do go in and get rid of Mark Andrews, do you elevate Charlie Kohler and play 2 tight end sets with him? Or do you go out and get a wide receiver 3 and now you got to change the whole scheme up to the point, and again, this was a scheme that back at Georgia, it was like Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers. Like that was the whole idea, is a multi tight end scheme. It's like, do you use so much Patrick Ricard, like so much fullback that it doesn't matter? Because right now, I mean, after Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, they don't really have a guy that's ready to be an every down player the way like a Demarcus Robinson was with the Rams. Maybe they go and get Demarcus Robinson, who's been with the Rams before, but it's like you have to change what you're doing, right? So if you're going to let go of Mark Andrews, you better have a plan. And to my point on that, the two-way tight ends, and I can make my pick real quick so we keep this puppy going. The two-way tight ends available in free agency are who? Like, who are the best players that can block and catch passes? Tyler Conklin,
They're gone. They're off
Austin
the board.
Hooper.
Oh, in free agency, yeah.
Free agency, like Conklin, Austin Hooper. Like because again, the pass catching guys are like Mike Gesicki, Juwan Johnson. Like, who is the best free agent tight end? It's a terrible grouping of options out there. That's why I think in the NFL draft, don't be surprised when tight ends get drafted fairly quickly, and don't be surprised if with the Christian Kirk move, don't be surprised if Evan Ingram's also on the trade block potentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that's a guy that either is going to fit in the scheme playing slot, which is going to be great, or they're going to want a two-way tight end like they had with Cade Otton, and he's going to be out.
Yeah. That's an excellent point, especially to that point earlier we were talking about. We're trying to take away the explosive plays. If you have a tight end in the slot, it's not necessarily as valuable as, for example, a Khalil Shakir, or moving around these alphas like Jamar Chase with the way he moves around into the slot.
Yeah, and that's what Liam Cohen likes to do. He likes to do it. He likes to use before. I mean, it was Cooper Kupp with the Rams, and then Chris Godwin. Like, it sounds like it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. Like, if that's the role that you want for that guy, then great. Yeah. There are offenses that have done great with the tight end in the slot, Greg Roman, and again, the trade off there is that Evan Ingram can catch the ball just as well as the pure slot guys like Tyler Boyd and Cole Beasley, but he's a much better blocker than them. People always talk about Evan Ingram as a blocker from the standpoint of a tight end, which he's not a good inline blocker. But when you compare him to slot players, he's a tremendous player. He's the best blocking slot wide receiver there is. Besides, it's like Mark Andrews and him, if you really think about how he's deployed. So if you find the right scheme, that works, but this isn't the scheme for it.
Nope. I totally agree with you. And it's just going to be a situation. And because of that tight end issue, that's why I took Colston Loveland here. I think between him and Tyler Warren, those are guys you have to go up and get a little bit earlier in your dynasty startups, because these guys are going to be able to play both ways, most likely, because we're expecting both of them to be in the first round at this point of the NFL draft. I really think those guys, they're like tight end 7 and 8 on my list, and they might have to jump up if Evan Ingram finds himself in a strange spot. Or TJ Hawkinson finds himself falling behind Jordan Addison when fully healthy with a rookie QB at the helm. So effectively. So that's where we stand. Let's just take a look quickly at the 6th round. We had rookies, Mecca Ibuka, Quinshon Judkins, and Luther Burden go. So really interesting there. We had our tight end run, which is interesting as well. And then we had some aging running backs, Kamara, Montgomery, Mixon, a few that were forced. But of course, your win now build as well. And then we'll see in the 7th round, I chose Caleb, but I struggle with that because him and Herbert are neck and neck for me. So I almost went Herbert to stack with McConkey. I do like the stacks when they're young in Dynasty. And then Devontae went. We'll see where he ends up. Terry McLaurin is such a value right now. Do not fall for the Debo hype. And then, of course, you are Justin Herbert. How are you feeling about how it shook out?
Yeah, I was going to take McLaurin there for sure because, I mean, like, he was incredible last year. Him and Adunze were the only two guys that got at least 15 targets, contested targets, and caught more than 70% of them. And to put that in perspective, no one in 2023, no one that got 15 contested targets caught more than 60. Like, they were just on a different level. Over the last 3 years, only 3 guys have done that. McLaurin and Adunze this year, and then in 2022, Nico Collins did. Like, just to catch that many of your contested balls is crazy. If you catch 50% of them, that's good. If you catch 60%, that's great. 70% is fairly rare. Nobody's catching 80. You just throw to that guy every play, right? So, like, if a dude was getting 15 or more contested targets and catching 80 of them, you would just throw it up to that guy. That's like Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, Mike Williams of old.
Right. It's just, not, and he would get hurt doing it. I was going to take Caleb Williams there. I was going to take Terry McLaurin. I have DJ Moore. So that would have been a good stack for me, but you ruined that, obviously. And you have McConkey. So now we can work out a trade.
That's right. That's right.
Right. But so my strategy here essentially, and again, because we're getting towards that point of the draft, in tight end premium, there's a trend that I see because it's not a super common format. A trend that I see among people that don't draft a lot of it is that the top tight ends get pushed way up, right? And potentially at times overdrafted a little bit. I don't think Brock Bowers is overdrafted because he's so young and he could be, in this format, he could be the best player for a long time, right?
Yeah.
But even in tight end premium, we rarely do see a tight end be the top flex player overall. In regular formats, the tight end has never been the top flex player. So, like, it's very rare for you to be able to successfully do 2 tight end sets, especially in Dynasty. It's so top heavy because you're not going to want to have a tight end in your flex. When you're competing to win, like if you look at my team right now, what tight end is going to start over Joe Mixon in my lineup? Maybe
Yeah.
ever. And he's not even in my lineup. Michael Pittman, those guys. It's like very rarely going to happen. So what I find that happens is you have the guys go early, and then everybody kind of drafts their first tight end, and then people don't take a second one. And that's where if you wait on tight end, you can take value. You can get value in this by just waiting and taking 2 and saying to myself, okay, it's tight end premium. So all I need is one of these guys to get 90 targets, and then I'm all set. So like for me, it was always going to be a 0 tight end, no matter what the wheel said.
We have 3 rounds left, 3 picks left for you. What are you thinking in terms of tight end? Are you willing to take a risk on Pitts if he falls? Komet is maybe an interesting option. Do you think someone like Likely or Sanat or Sanders takes a step up? You got Otten, you got Kelsey sitting there. Are you thinking that you're going to wait on tight end through, the double-digit rounds here, or is there somebody here you like at value?
I'll take, I got enough at running. I got 3 wide receivers, 3 running backs. I'll take a couple guys here, and then we'll see with the next one. But I like taking one guy I can trust and one guy, the old yin and yang tight end, my friend.
Yep.
One guy that I can trust and one guy that just pure upside. The rest doesn't matter at all. Right.
Love it.
So and in the order I take them in depends on the availability. So for me, in this situation, like if Darvin doesn't take Pitts here, I'll take Pitts. Pitts is 24 years old. Pitts has a 1,000-yard season. If Pitts doesn't ever have another 1,000-yard season in his career, he'll be only like the 6th person ever for that to happen. So the 6th person ever to have 1,000 yards as a rookie and then never have it happen again. And we're talking like it's only happened twice over the last 25 years. Right. Like one of the guys that do it was a tight end. It was Mike Ditka, but that was 50 years ago, So like it's just the odds are in his, unless, the knee is messed up or the attitude's not there, the odds are that this guy at some point is going to have a good season. I mean, that last couple of years, he's still breaking off 50-yard plays, had 3 40+ yard plays last year. Only 3 tight ends have had 3 or more 40+ yards in the same season since I've been doing this. Kittle, him, and Jonnu Smith, So when I look at the format, tight end premium, you got to go for the PPR type guys. So a guy like Cole Kmet, I do worry that he's going to be the 3rd target on the team. Right.
Yeah.
Now in this offense, if Ben Johnson uses what he does with 2 wide receivers and then the tight end and then multiple running backs or whatever, then he could be fine, just like Laporta was. But Laporta got it via touchdowns. Same like a guy like George Kittle. Like he thrives on big plays, but if you take all the tight ends, there's only been 5 tight ends to get 95 or fewer targets and have 200 PPR points. 3 of them were Kittle. One of them was Vernon Davis. Like they got to be freaks. The other one was Julius Thomas, the year that Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
So like you need the targets, you know what I mean? And 200 PPR points is kind of the bar for a difference making player, So like I need the targets. I think so. Now I just took my risky tight end. I would circle back here and take somebody that's quote unquote safe that I think I could start all of this season. Even if Pitts gets stuck where he is now and they don't use him properly and he has to wait until he's off your option, then he's my guy of the future. So now I have no problem taking a Kelsey or an Ingram or whoever. So
yeah. And that's kind of what you have to do as well, right? If you're waiting this long and you're taking that risk, even Loveland, some of these rookies are risks. And Njoku, as Jeremy's first tight end here, a risk. Kincaid, team 11, that's being auto-drafted, but also a risk. Yeah, you do need to follow that up with somebody who's reasonable at tight ends, especially in the premium. We saw Jonnu Smith come out of nowhere last year. We saw Cade Otton be relevant last year for a stretch before he got injured. Ferguson is a decent option in an offense that's going to be devoid of pass catching weapons yet again, most likely.
We'll see.
So,
we'll see what Jerry says. That's the thing. The thing though about Ferguson and again, I'm not a big Ferguson fan in general because he's not super athletic, but you're right that he's in a position where they don't have the money to go get somebody.
Right.
Who's really out there if they do? And one of the greatest ways to create leverage is betting on or against rookies, right?
Yeah.
So if you're, Jake Ferguson, right? If you whoever the Cowboys draft that wide receiver, everyone's gonna be excited because he can be the wide
Yes.
receiver on the 2 immediately. And then you bet and you want to bet on that player, but you also want to sneaky keep in the back of your mind the possibility that that guy is going to be N'Keal Harry or that guy is going to be, Corey Davis or somebody, you know what I mean? And like, what if that guy just does nothing? What if Jalen Polk, right? Like,
Yeah.
what if he just shows up, he's not ready? Then who gets the targets? And
Right.
and the de facto guy would be Ferg Dog. So it's like, it's kind of how it goes there. That's how you place your bets. You don't want to bet against Jamar Chase and T Higgins, right? Because you
Yeah.
already know those are known commodities. Bet against CeeDee Lamb, and you're not going to bet against CeeDee Lamb, but I'll bet against a rookie any day.
Yeah.
So good ways to create leverage on both sides, right? And if it's like for you, especially with your team, you have Colston Loveland, you take Jake Ferguson, who cares? It's like you're not necessarily
Right.
playing to win. If you were playing to win and you took Colston Loveland, then you should really consider taking the safest possible guy. But there's not a whole lot of those guys left. I guess Dallas
Right.
Goedert would be the definition, right? Of like safe but boring. Never finished higher
Yep.
than tight end 7. Gets hurt every year, but who cares in Dynasty because it's top heavy format. Like
Yep.
that's just the way that I play those positions. And I play quarterback a lot of times the same way. Like if I'm going to start my draft with 7 position players, I can afford to take my safe quarterback, which is Herbert. And then now, like I would circle back and say, okay, how do I put my team in a position to steamroll everybody? And
Yeah.
that's by getting lucky on a upside pick quarterback, which there's a couple of them here. If they're there, I'm going to take another one.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. And so many good nuggets there, but you really just need to figure out what you're doing with your build and how you choose
Right.
to play the board. A perfect example, like you said, is I was like, oh crap, I need a running back. Maybe I do want to try to compete this year. Let's get James Conner, see if there's any value there, which he's gonna be the guy again this year. Let's hope he stays healthy. If my team's out of it, maybe I can trade him mid-season. But then I can't go back to back with Connor and another risky running back like Brian Robinson, who I was considering there. So,
Right.
I could have went rookie running back. I decided go rookie wide receiver because there aren't too many great ones. And Matthew Golden absolutely showed out at the combine, in addition to showing out on tape as an actual wide receiver. I'm banking on him being Xavier Worthy plus. We'll see where he lands if he can actually do that.
That's the hype name. That's the name right now, right? Matthew Golden,
Yeah.
that's a big hype play. So
Yeah.
I love that one. And again, it's like it's so much fun to do these and to then pop in and do another mock from the other side and see how it
Yep.
goes. But for me, it's like you go back and look at this draft, and I'm sure we'll give it a quick review.
Yep.
But like you go back and look at the first 2 rounds there. So here we go. So now I'm sitting here and I can go Anthony Richardson, I can go Kyler Murray. And if this was a 2 quarterback league, I would go Kyler Murray
Yep.
because I need to start them both. Because I don't need to start this other player and I don't care about the floor at all, I'll select Anthony Richardson and just say, okay, here's an absolute freak athlete. Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm starting Justin Herbert week 1 no matter what, right?
Yep.
Like I'm safe at quarterback. Anthony Richardson doesn't have to play for me. He only plays for me if he becomes something special, you know? So that's the kind of way I operate with those guys for sure. And again,
Yep.
in single QB, there's so many guys like you can, if we were doing 20 rounds, you grab like Bryce Young who's also still exciting. It's like you can find guys to fill in for bye weeks, but I'm playing a win now. So I need to make sure I get my wide receivers and running backs first, which I did. And then hopefully create leverage at the quarterback and tight end position by hitting there. And I also in my back pocket, as always, have the opportunity to take my picks and turn them into Christian McCaffrey or turn them into a player. So if somebody gets hurt, I keep pushing forward now.
100%. And that's the whole game here. The draft is just one piece of the puzzle. We always need to make sure that we're looking for value. We're trying to figure out appropriate builds, but as things happen in the offseason, during the season, with your own squads, with injuries, with other squads in the league that you thought were juggernauts, you always have to try and pivot and take advantage where you can. As long as you're not in like 20 something dynasty leagues like I am, in like 10 redraft leagues, which gets crazy. If you're a normal person with just a couple of leagues, make sure that you're kind of scouring that wire and checking out what's going on with the other teammates. And like you said, Coop, just say, hey, listen, I'm not in it this year. It looks like you're going for the championship. What will you give me for James Conner, who's on a run of a couple of 100-yard games and has been killing it?
And that was the article that won the FSWA article of the year, was called 3 Books for the Dynasty Trader. And it was exactly that. It was exactly about, the first book is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it literally goes into, look, you don't have to be the enemy of this person, right? You can be friends with them. You can talk to them like they're an adult. You don't have to be like, your team sucks, trade me your players, right? Like, you can say, hey, I see what you're doing. I'm doing the opposite. Let's help each other out. I'll win now, you'll win later. That's how this is supposed to work. That's what the Rams and the Lions did. That's what teams do all the time, right? So like, that's how you go in and set yourself up. So I love that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let's make sure that when you are on the clock, it is one piece of the puzzle, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. So make sure that you're building appropriately with a build in mind, but then keeping, tabs on how's this going to shake out for me down the road, and what can I do to improve my team at every single stage. So we finished the draft here. Let's just get into a few of the chats. Number one, we have Max Crosby, who's the man, but he's on defense, so we don't really care about Max Crosby, but, and he's also a Raider, so we don't really care about him. Quick question for you from Jamie Coop. He's on the clock in a best ball 13th round. Ford, yuck. Corum, yuck. Right, yuck. Who's your favorite of this group?
Yeah, again, that depends on what I have already. If I'm pretty loaded at running back, then I don't necessarily need Ford. If I was doing a 0 RB, then I go Ford, because you're going to need production right away. The upside plays are Corum and Wright, right? So it's like, it really boils down to what kind of build you have already. If you are loaded at the top at running back, let's say you win like 3 running backs early, I would go Corum, because if something happens to Kyron Williams, he's the only guy that's going to like really take your team to another level. Wright is going to be he's going to be playing a decent amount now that Raheem Mostert's been released, right? It's going to be Wright and Devon Achane, so he's pretty solid. Ford, the problem with Ford is that the numbers don't really match up to the film, and they don't really match up to the splits. Like, people look at it like, wow, 5 yards a carry, but like, this guy on 2nd and 10 or longer was averaging like 11 yards a carry, right? And there was just a lot of like junk. So, and he was ripping off big plays, which we like, and which is good for best ball. But like, you want these guys to be consistently productive. And I just worry that they're going to look at Ford and say, hey, we know where this guy is good, pass downs, and those type of plays, and we're going to bring in a bruiser to work on the early downs. But again, it's a team that doesn't have a lot of money, so Ford is probably your best path to productivity right away. Like, you don't want to have a team of 5 Corums hoping that they break out down the stretch. We're like rookies, guys like Jonathan Brooks that aren't going to be ready. Like, if you got guys like that, then you got to go forward to give yourself the balance. And that's what's so fun about best ball and all these, especially best ball, is that like, you're trying to build your way to survive long enough to win those playoffs, right?
Yeah.
I made it this year. I made it to the farthest I ever made it to the last round of Best Ball Mania. I came in like top 300 or so. But again, there's a lot of luck that goes into it, but definitely think about who you have already before you make that call.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Personally, I like Corum, Wright, Ford. I just don't believe in Ford for the reasons you outlined. I also wonder what's going on with that Cleveland offensive line and how long it can kind of stay together and be as dominant as it's been. I know they took a step back last year. They're not the best offensive line for the run game in the league anymore. And we'll have to see what happens in free agency and if that continues. But of course, you got some good options there for yourself. Joey Wright bragging about taking Baker in the 10th round, which I think is a fair brag.
Yeah.
That is exactly how it works, Joey Wright. So let's actually get into this question before we go over our own rosters. From Michael T. Tickles your fancy. I don't know if any fancies are being tickled, Mike, but certainly there's some rosters we
they're being
like.
tickled, Mike. They're being tickled for sure. I do like Mike's raw. I wouldn't have taken Josh Allen. That's the one pick I didn't like. Every other pick I
Right.
loved. Barkley or Dunze. I love the Metcalf move. Chuba Hubbard. I mean, like he's
Yeah.
going to be starting. They're going to have to bring somebody in behind him while they wait for Jonathan Taylor. But there's no reason to invest a ton more at that spot. So he's kind of locked in. Godwin's a player that I've always loved. I do also like Joey's team. Unfortunately, Tyron Tracy's a guy that I like a lot. I think Tyron Tracy, I've seen flashes from him that we saw from guys like Kamara, Eckler, really good contact balance. I like your team. Uh, I like Kingpin Karen's team with Bowers
Mhm.
and Likely. I mean, a lot of people did a good job here. Darvin, I mean, like the thing is when you have the couple auto drafters in there taking
Yeah.
terrible teams. Auto drafter 11's team actually isn't that bad, but like a couple
No,
of the
I
auto
agree.
draft teams I don't
I
love.
was looking. I
But
was
they
looking at
definitely
that one.
they helped us out. Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, and
I'm
big game James. Like I mean, like I needed Jalen Hurts there, so I'm a little mad at him. That would have been really good for my team to get Jalen Hurts, but it's a really good team, man. And it's like Luther Burden, Terry McLaurin, Trey Harris. It's like
yeah.
he kind of went hero wide receiver. He kind of like waited on wide receiver, but still got incredible wide receivers.
Yeah. And
So
that's what, again, that goes back to talking about, how you can play the draft and where you can find the advantages in the game. Achan as the hero build with Warren at the end, who, look, he could become the guy. I think I'm a little shell shocked from, Tony Pollard just having the one season where he became the guy and then fell off. And then I'm trying to think of situations, but they don't typically work out where the satellite, 1B back all of a sudden takes over and then becomes this massive talent. I'm a little concerned about Jalen Warren in that regard. That said, he still could get the options in that offense. So we'll see if I believe he's in Pittsburgh. I know
he's a
he had an option,
he's
but
a restricted free agent, so they can give him if they do the but the thing is, he's an undrafted restricted free agent. So if they do the original round tender, it'll pay him 3 million. But another team can give him an offer, and if they don't
there you go.
match that offer, they get nothing. If they give him a second round tender, then if a team offers him a contract and they don't match it, they get a second round pick back. But they have to pay him a min of $5.1 million to do that. Which I mean,
Okay.
pay's probably worth it, right? So I
It might
think
be.
the what often happens with the restricted free agents is they say, okay, if we gave you a second round tender, we'd give you $5 million. What if we give you a 2-year deal and we give you more than 5 million guaranteed, but it's over 2 years? Like that's kind of what you end up seeing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple-year deal where he gets like 6-7 million guaranteed. He gets more money than he would have got on the other deal. He stays in town. He's a starting running back. That's my prediction. But I've only
Yeah.
thought about it a lot.
It it makes sense, and he's 250 pounds, right? So at 5'8", so he's certainly got a little bit more mass on him than some of these
Right.
other guys that we see who have played this ancillary role. Najee Harris, of course, out of town as of a couple of they cut bait
Right.
with him as soon as possible.
He crushes. I mean, Jalen Warren crushes people in the pass blocking game.
Yeah,
That's usually the problem you run into is that if you can't pass block, then they don't trust you and you lose those snaps. But that's not a problem for me. I don't see why. Like a guy like Kyron Williams is small and he's slow,
mhm,
and he played 1,000 snaps and didn't get hurt. So I don't know.
yeah.
I think he might be fine.
Yeah, so we'll see with Jalen Warren, but again, good picks here. A couple other teams here: Tal 888, Puka, Nico, Bucky, Jaden, Chase Brown, and
I
then the
love
rookie
it.
Tyler Warren with Pearsall. I love that build there.
That team's
Really
sick.
interesting. And then, of course, we got Jeremy with CD, Christian McCaffrey, unfortunately, with the auto pick. Probably a little bit early there. CJ Stroud, though, I think is a good value at QB6. You might need to wait a little bit longer for him. I think I personally prefer Caleb or Patrick Mahomes, but CJ Stroud can absolutely have a bounce back. And then the old dog wide receivers, Evans and Adams,
Right.
are absolutely going to kill it. And look, he's got Kyler Murray there in the back end in
Right.
case
So
CJ Stroud doesn't work out.
that's a team that's doing something similar to me and is a team that I would be worried about for this year. Right. Like
Yeah,
that's a team that rivals what I'm doing. He did the 3 running backs as well. Like that's kind of the win now approach. And Tal did a great job with I love what he did with the tight ends because it's like you take Tyler Warren, that's your high risk pick. You circle back for Tucker Kraft, who might not be a top 2 target on the team, but he had 2 plays of 60 plus yards. He's clearly won the job over Luke Musgrave. And there are rumblings. Christian Watson, I mean, Christian Watson's dad came out and said like he's not going to be ready to play next year. Like
Yeah.
not potentially not at all. Like there's a Christian Watson's dad. I don't know why he decided it was his duty to announce this, but he basically said that there's a concern he might not play the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
So
And is he even going to be ready, right? Like for the full offseason program the following year, right? Is
that's
this
what I
something
mean.
that gets debilitating, right?
Could be a problem. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it. The thing is that the thing you want to look out for is nerve damage. That's, you hear a guy like Marquise Lee, it's just like he never came back to play at a high level, dude, because it just, it's sad, but like that can happen sometimes. And you got to worry about that with guys like Tank Dell, guys like, anybody that suffers those like multiple ligament tears, the really bad ones, you never know.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And Tank Dell, another one. You just hope these guys can come back from these brutal injuries. We'll have to see. We're running a little bit over. I'm just going to quickly run through these comments. We'll talk about our teams and then we'll get out of here. Let's see a few things. Joey Wright says Kingpin Karen is forcing his hand, had a really good draft. Michael T says, that's me. That's why I asked the question, because he crushed a good job, Mike. Well done. And then Jamie, the top 5 players at each position with the first 4 picks. I think that was with Bowers, Genty, Devonta and Rice. Who are we talking about?
With top 5 players at each position with the first 4 picks. I mean, so it was Jamie wasn't Kingpin Karen. Jamie was Big Game James. So that's Justin Jefferson, Trey McBride, Devon H. I mean, not necessarily wrong. Not necessarily wrong. It's and I mean that team definitely, especially for tight end premium, looking good. You just need those wide receivers to hit, but you get one rookie wide receiver that hits, now you're looking good. Also, Courtland Sutton looked really good the year before last with the contested catches and the crazy plays. It just wasn't good targets. And this year with a good quarterback, I mean, he looked really good. So
That's a good
Courtland
team. Sutton. Yeah, super good value for him. All right, so let's just talk about our teams before we get out of here. Andrew, what are you thinking about your squad and your win now build? Are you built to win now? Do you think you could take it home? And what would you have done differently, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some moves I could have made at tight end or quarterback. I mean, the auto pick guy getting assigned Mark Andrews there definitely made it easier for me to do what I was doing. But I basically just looked at it and said, okay, taking young guys that are going to be good for a couple of years in my first few picks. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, DJ Moore. Those guys are all at the age apex. If I really wanted to push it, I could have taken Terry McLaurin, but we were running out of like starting running backs. And again, I don't think Alvin Kamara would have been auto picked where he was. That would have been a guy that I probably would have had a real shot at in a real draft. But like, that like I had to take Mixon there because I was running out of true starting running backs, right? So like I looked at it and said, okay, you know what? I got my running backs, wide receivers are all guys that could finish as RB1s or wide receiver ones. And then now I just double tap, piece together quarterback. And knowing that I'm highly willing to trade my future picks, I can do that because now right from the rip, I know all the teams that I don't think are going to win now. And even if they think they're going to, when the season starts and they go 0-4, it becomes a lot easy for me to sneak in and grab the one older player that they did take or that they did add off waivers, right? Like you, for instance, like if your team starts at 0-5, you're going to be much more willing to give me James Conner, right? Like, and that's the thing is if you're playing well, then you're fine. But that's one guy that I circle in this draft and say, okay, James Conner is a guy that I could pry away from him, right? I look at Jeremy's team. He's not going to trade me anybody because he's playing to win now, right? So I start looking around and saying, okay, who can I potentially pry away? Look at Kingpin Karen's team and say, okay, Jerry Jeudy. If they're not winning right away, I think I can go in and get Jerry Jeudy from him. Like that's the kind of stuff that I start doing now and plan ahead and say, okay, if things go bad, even for Joey's team, like I think he would be willing to trade me George Kittle. That's like the one guy that's 30 years old on his team. So you start saying, okay, where are my parachutes if I need them? And there's plenty out here.
Yep. Totally agree with that. You have to absolutely take care of that. And at the same time, personally, for my build with James Conner in the 8th round, and because I'm lacking running backs, I'm not necessarily going rookie running back, hammering that in 11, 12, 13, 14 round. I'm looking for those vets who are still available. You mentioned the fact that you'll be looking at vets. Ramondre Stevenson, I don't like him, but it's
I,
possible
I
depending
don't
who
see
they
why.
draft.
The thing is, I don't see why they signed him to an extension. We know who Antonio Gibson is. Like, if this team can turn things around, we've seen teams turn
Yeah.
things around really quick. You look at Todd Gurley with his first year with the Rams, he got like 250 carries, I think it was, and ran for like 800 yards. The very next year, they grabbed Andrew Whitworth. They upgraded a few spots, and then he got literally the same number of carries, and he was the RB1 in fantasy just because
Yeah.
everything around him got bigger and better. And there's, it doesn't always happen like that, but they went from winning 4 games to winning 12. So the
Yeah.
Patriots might not go from 3 to winning 12, but if they're better, Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a really good player.
Agree. I mean, Najee Harris, you got the volume king, Aaron Jones, who continues to do it and doesn't have the tread on his tires as a typical, 30-year-old back normally would. Tajay Spears could come into his own. Zach Moss could be healthy, although probably won't be in Cincinnati. But you have options here of guys that you can take later. J.K. Dobbins is still on the board. I mean, that ADP is crazy. I think he's going to end up somewhere. He looked good enough last year, albeit in a great running system. I think he looked good enough last year to, if he lands somewhere like the Chiefs, decide to take a chance on him because of Pacheco's concerns, or he goes to the Saints or something like that. It could be a very interesting situation for J.K. Dobbins, especially in these double-digit rounds.
Yeah.
And then I think, with my team, 0 RB, we forced it a little bit, but I'm happy with it. I stayed young. I was able to kind of put it together. Should I have taken Herbert instead of Caleb Williams? Maybe. But Caleb Williams has that potential to ascend further than the QB8, where I had him before the Ben Johnson move. Although I do have Herbert QB7 at the moment. And then Golden Harvey, had to take a couple rookies at the end. Some of my favorites, especially RJ Harvey, absolute stud. Not necessarily on the greatest team where you can assess his value, but he had some great games against some really good defenses. I take him over Scatterbo. I am really considering putting him above Devin Neal. That's kind of something that I'm weighing at the moment. But I'm not all the way through all of my rookie running backs. But guys like Caleb Johnson, Ollie Gordon didn't necessarily have the best combine. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not everything, but you have to weigh all of these things and take your risk where you can.
Yeah, you got to, man. And I love that process of, like, like the combine is important, right? Like, everyone tries to tell you that the combine's not important, the draft isn't important, this isn't important, that isn't important. Dude, it's all important. Like, there's no reason. It's so funny where it's like we talk about science and we talk about how we do things. There's no reason to exclude data points. I feel like the people that are telling you certain things aren't important at all, that you can completely ignore the draft. Those people have an agenda to push, whether they have some sort of model or they're film grinders or whatever they have, whatever's going on that's causing that. To me, there's an agenda there, because we've seen the draft change drastically how we view these players, and we've seen the NFL teams a lot of times be right. Right, go and look at Ryan Heath, his study on draft capital and versus speed and all these other things. But it's like every model that the top guys, I mean, like I said, JJ Zacharyson, Dwayne McFarland, Ryan Heath, like all their models use draft capital. So, like, you can ignore it if you want, but it's what happens in the draft is such an important piece. And we've seen it time and time again that, like, the 5 teams go in and they need a big split end, and then the Colts and the Bengals take Michael Pittman and T. Higgins early, and Chase Claypool and Marvin Mims fall, and the Jets passed. The Jets needed a split end. After those guys went, they passed on Marvin Mims, and then later took him. And people still tried to say, "No, I will rank Marvin Mims over Michael Pittman. I'll rank him over T. Higgins." They're just ignoring what teams with needs are doing on the day that it's time to pick the players, right? Like, you just can't do that. The narrative of the draft is just as important as everything else. So, keep that in mind.
And the ultimate case, right, is Justin Jefferson. Who were the guys picked above Justin Jefferson? One of them was Jerry Jeudy, right? Who else was above
CeeDee
Jefferson?
Lamb,
There were a couple guys.
well, there's some good players. There's some bad ones. The number one bad
Rager.
one is Jalen Reagor. But, like,
Rager.
you got the clip of the Vikings. You got the clips of the Vikings on draft day laughing when that pick was made. So there are times where the draft, again, the thing about the draft is that all it takes is one team to make a really egregious mistake, and it doesn't actually represent how the scouts view everything, right? It's like, if 31 teams didn't like Jalen Reagor, but the Eagles take him, then that, we don't get that full representation. And again, that's why it's only one piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
But if it's like if guys are getting picked in, at 4 overall or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 overall, like the hit rates are just better. The hit rates are better all the way down. Like that's just math for every position.
Yeah.
So.
And we don't know, these guys who were picked later too. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had, I don't know if he has the tattoo, but he definitely can rattle off the names of everybody picked above him. The Tom Brady's who just come into the league and just make up their mind to be the hardest worker. We don't necessarily know the mentality and makeup of all of these guys. We have to see it sometimes.
Exactly. And it's like, and with those guys, like even factoring them into the formula, the hit rate is still 5%, right? It's like the odds of you correctly identifying that player versus being the person that reaches for, Hakeem Butler or Kelvin Harmon or Quincy Enunwa. Quincy Enunwa was the best 5th round wide receiver for a long time before, like Tyreek Hill and a couple of these guys, Puka Nacua. So yes, you draft those guys, but don't draft them. Don't get ahead of your skis and think that because you drafted one of them once, you'll get them all. It's just it's a difficult game. So just keep that in mind, everybody.
100%. Really appreciate you coming on, Andrew. Let's do a couple of things before we sign off for here. Let's see. Joey Wright. There's Joey Wright telling you he's not giving you anything. So just be careful trying to trade with Joey. Jamie, we appreciate you. And we appreciate all of you for tuning into us. We are Adjust the Ranks. We are in a lot of different areas. We're on YouTube. We are part of the Fantasy Football Universe Network. So we're over there. We're on Twitter. We're on TikTok, on both channels, and we're trying to grow them. So we had Coop today. We have a bunch of amazing guests lined up for March. We got a couple guys also April, June, July throughout the offseason, and we're going to be mock drafting a ton. Why do we do it? Because we love doing it. I mean, if I wasn't doing this on a podcast, I'd be doing it in my free time while I'm laying in bed at midnight, just mock drafting with people. So you just have to kind of work the muscle and make sure that you can, understand values. And that's what we're going to be trying to do here for you on Adjust the Ranks, is do that for you. Andrew, where can people find you? I know plenty of people who tuned in know that already, but the FSWA Writer of the Year probably has very few people in dark corners who don't know who he is, but throw it out there. Where are you? What can you do for the people?
Yeah, so Fantasy Alarm is where all my stuff lives, all my articles, all my videos on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube, and then I'm on channel SiriusXM, usually on channel 87 on Thursdays and Fridays, 6 to 8 p.m. That I'm always going to be on for those. During the season, we're on Sunday morning. This week, Howard's out, so I'm filling in all week for him. So I was on yesterday, I'm on tonight, but Thursdays and Fridays, channel 87, 6 to 8 p.m. Or you just download the SiriusXM app. You can listen to our show whenever you want. We have a blast on there. It's a lot of fun. So, but yeah, most of my stuff at Fantasy Alarm, and follow me on Twitter at Coop A Fiasco.
Perfect. And we're going to put all that in the description so you can rewatch this over to Adjust the Ranks on the channel. And Coop, again, we appreciate you joining us. Joey, we appreciate you joining us. So for Andrew, I am Jeremy. We are Adjust the Ranks. And if I can find the button, which I always fail to find in the first attempt, we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Adjust the Ranks is most obliged to your patronage. Should you wish to imbibe future content via your auditory and/or ocular cavities, do offer your clicks of approval and subscription.